I'm Dana Robinson, and welcome to KHQN Radio TV Interview. I have a very special guest with me today, and he's a man who's bringing miracles into people's lives. And you know, in the day and age we live in, we need more miracles. And I'm going to be talking with Ken Cromar. He's a producer, he's a director, and what a list of credits he has. But the one he's working on now may be the most meaningful to him. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dana. Appreciate it. Good to be with you.
It's so good to have you here. Miracles, the movie. I mean, that just gets images in my head immediately.
Well, thank you. Yes, I've worked on a lot of different productions throughout my life, but this one has really captured my heart. Miracles, kids today, today's 9/11.
Yes.
This is the 12th anniversary today. And the heart's a little tender, and people are thinking about what happened 12 years ago. And kids today do not know about the American history. They don't know about scriptural history, the miracles that have happened to form this nation, to bring freedom to the world. And that is why I thought this film needed to be made. If the kids today, and this film is particularly focused on for young people, if they could understand that there were miracles that Moses leaving Egypt after 400 years of slavery and how that happened, Noah and the ark, we think we know that story, right? Oh, there's so much more. The founding of this nation, George Washington, and the miracle after miracle where he was shot at numerous times and was never hit. Bulletproof George Washington, they called him. And so we feel like if we could tell this story, then kids of today would actually know of the God of miracles in whom they could trust as the more difficult times come in the future, because they will get very difficult in the future. We know that.
Well, they definitely will, and people will look to miracles to happen in their own lives, to sometimes even preserve their own lives with what may be coming, because we never know from day to day. But what I do know is that we have something to share with the audience today. We have video footage. We will inspire you. It will enlighten you. It will make you want to reach out and find your own miracles and understand miracles even better in your own life.
Very good, Dana. Thank you. In fact, do you mind if we just hit the first video clip right now? Hi, my name's Ken Cromar. I'm a producer-director, and I really prefer to be on the other side of the camera, but I had to step in front because I needed to ask for your help. I'm making an exciting new documentary called Miracles, and we need a lot of resources to be able to do this, and I'm hoping you'll give us a hand. As you can see from my website, I've worked on a lot of successful productions, many of which you may have seen. But now I'm working on a very important documentary production called Miracles. Let me tell you why this production is so important. If you've watched the news or read the newspapers lately, I don't have to tell you that our nation is in deep trouble and that the world seems to be spinning out of control. Wars, hatred, addictions, abuse, child abuse. People are just losing hope. Some are wondering if God is there or if He even cares. Well, I'm here to tell you that He does care, and He loves all His children. And I'm hoping to prove it with this exciting new video called Miracles. But I can't make this film without your help. Professional film production's not cheap. I need financial resources to make Miracles, and crowdfunding looks to be the fastest way to reach out to faithful friends like you to get this project funded and completed. Our goal is to raise $44,444, but we hope to get well past that target. Let me tell you why we're making Miracles and why we need your help. He who fails to learn from history is forever doomed to repeat it. Well, history suffered through many bad events, so we don't really want to repeat the worst parts of our past. If we could find a map with the paths that lead to historical successes, then maybe we could get ourselves on similar roads that will lead to our future successes. Being on these paths could prove to be very helpful when the times get tough. Miracles will include many success stories, including Moses. Did you know that after 400 years of captive slavery in Egypt, that Moses led the children of Israel on a miraculous escape to freedom? But did you know that according to Jewish biblical scholars, it is believed that only 20% actually chose to follow Moses out of slavery in Egypt to freedom? Those that stayed behind missed the miracle of the Red Sea and entry into the Promised Land. Did you know that when George Washington was a young officer, he was miraculously spared in a battle where he was the only officer who wasn't shot off his horse and was able to lead the remaining survivors to safety? When he checked his coat, he found 4 bullet holes, but he had not been hit. That story of the bulletproof George Washington used to be in our school history books, but not anymore. During the Korean War, 2 U.S. artillery batteries of 200 men were side by side, surrounded by 10,000 Chinese soldiers, who attacked in a kamikaze style, wiping out every man from the Wyoming unit. But not one man was killed in the 213th, and they also captured 800 Chinese prisoners, and in doing that, saved their lives too. My personal favorite story happened in Iraq in 2006, where a unit called the Triple Deuce, a group of prayerful men who tried to do the right thing and sought to avoid having to kill anyone, they trusted in God and managed to survive the most dangerous area in Iraq and not lose a single man. A young woman saw the buildings come down on 9/11 and knew she needed to help. Jill Stevens went to Afghanistan, where she served as a medic, and she served the local people. Her friends pushed her to take off her combat boots and put on high heels. To her surprise, she was selected by the TV audience as Miss America's Choice, even though she chose to wear more modest clothing during the competition. She walked away from all that fame provides so she could marry and be a mom. So many miracles to be shared, with so little time to tell them all. Let me show you what I'm trying to do. This kind of painting can be turned into this kind of animation. But it's an expensive process. It takes money. I have to hire my camera crew and equipment. I have to travel to interview individuals. Already, we've had the help of Rabbi Danial Lapin, authors Timothy Ballard, and Richard Paul Evans, and a number of other well-known individuals who have stepped in front of the camera to lend us a hand with miracles. But we have a long way to go still. You can play an important part in making miracles. Today, you can make a difference for good in the world by just pointing and clicking. Everyone can help. Whether we raise $25,000, our target $44,444, or raise more so that we can make it better, we will finish this production. I promise you. My goal is that when young people see this finished production, they will be inspired, so much so that they too will know of the kind and loving God in whom they can trust. This project's really important, and it will bless a lot of people's lives and give them hope. Sure, the world is sick and has problems, but in reality, this creates opportunities to lift others to a higher, better place. To inspire your contribution, generous friends have offered many gifts from which you can choose, including music, books, Kindle downloads, and of course, copies of the finished DVD and Blu-ray, as our way of thanking you for your support. You can also help by sharing this website with your friends. Do you believe in miracles? I believe in miracles, and we need to help others understand that they too can believe in miracles. I am truly grateful for this opportunity to make miracles, and with you, take it to a hungry world, starving to be able to believe again.
You know, when you see video like that, it really makes you think, and it inspires you. And I'm really curious about the $44,444, because that's not a lot of money to do a documentary. It's peanuts. But when I viewed that myself, this production is worth $44 million for the hope it can give people once they see it and they feel what comes from Miracles, the movie.
Thank you for pointing that out. It really is a small amount of money. We know that. But we're trying something, we felt impressed to try something we've never tried before, and that is social media to raise resources.
Sure.
And to be honest with you, we don't need that much. The people that are working on this film are doing it out of their heart, myself included. So we just need enough to get the materials and the shooting, the flights, everything that we need to get done. You know, today is 9/11. the 12th anniversary, and it gave me chills as I watched that footage just there. Seeing that, I forgot how I felt about that day. And we have a lot of people that are losing hope out there, and they need to know that the God of miracles is real and that he is there for us and will perform those miracles again. And how do we learn that? How do we teach that to our kids? We tell them the miracles of the past, scriptural, the history of this nation, you name it. There are miracles that have happened throughout time, and the kids today just don't get those told, definitely not in school.
Definitely not.
And so that is why we're making this film. And once they learn that, we believe that they'll be armed and ready for the future, so that as times get difficult, and they will get difficult, they will know in whom they can trust and seek for those same miracles in their lives as they live a life that's worthy of that. And that's what we hope to do.
And imagine, you can bring hope into people's lives. I mean, just by giving a few dollars towards this project, seeing it completed, and you can know that I've helped spread hope in the land that I love. And there's a man that loves this land, and he's really excited about your project. And you brought a clip of him.
Thank you very much. That's a great intro to David Barton. David Barton is known as America's historian. David Barton has gathered over 100,000 original documents and other support documents.
My goodness.
Of the founders and what they said about the founding of this nation.
Yes.
Many people today is like, oh, no, they were deists and this, that, and the other. They didn't believe in God. No, that's not true. Their own words tell of an acknowledgement of God and that there were miracles that made this happen. This nation should not have been founded. We were fighting against a superpower that had the greatest military in the history of the earth to that point. And a ragtag band of little soldiers, little shopkeepers, fought them off and won freedom. Now let's run that video clip. Let David Barton tell one of those stories, please.
Major Ferguson, he and 3 of his sharpshooters are at one location. They're up high in the trees, and they're just picking off American soldiers, American officers at will. They're just popping and dropping these guys. And they've been doing it all morning. And suddenly a guy comes riding into the picture, and there's actually 2 American officers. And for whatever reason, Major Ferguson, he said he just had this impulse that came over him and said, I shot enough guys this morning. I don't think I need to shoot anymore. And so he had his rifle lined up on this officer, had it lined up, and he was about to pull the trigger, and he said this impulse suddenly came over him not to shoot. And so he didn't shoot. And he said the officer looked up full in his eyes, and they stared at each other. The officer looking right down the barrel, looking up into the tree where he's sitting with the barrel, sitting with his rifle. He didn't pull the trigger, and the officer looked at him and then just slowly turned his back to him and just walked off on his horse. The 2 officers going off. The officer turned out to be George Washington. Later, his men that were with him said, don't you know who that was? You could have ended the American Revolution. So those are the kind of miracles that you see throughout history that are inexplicable unless you understand that there is a divine hand directing the counterplan, and that's the way American history is written.
As I watch that, Ken, we can't afford to ever take God out of the equation. We just can't.
No. If we do, we're on our own. and that's really...
Scary place to be.
Yeah, if it's me, I don't want to be on my own, that's for sure. But it's true. It's true. With God and one, there's the majority, and one can succeed in anything. I think back on that story we heard in the first video about Moses and about Noah. And a very interesting little fact we learned about Noah the other day. I hadn't noticed this. It's in the scriptures. It's in Genesis. I think it's chapter 7, verse 3, if I remember right. Noah finishes the boat. He's 600 years old, okay? Why does he have to build this boat? The Lord says, build the boat. He does it. And then he's told to go into the boat and seal it up. And he seals it up. How long did he sit there, do you suppose, before the rain came down? A few hours?
No idea.
He was there for 7 days.
Really?
It was an act of faith on his part to say, God, I trust you. You told me to do this. I will sit in this boat until it rains. and he got in his boat, and 7 days he sat there, and then it began to rain. And you know the rest of that story. And I find it fascinating, Dana, that we have to make a determined act of faith. Famous painting by Michelangelo. He's on, you've seen it before, where God is reaching out, and he reaches out. And notice how God is reaching with great intensity towards Adam, who he's just created. All the angels are around him, and they're reaching with great intensity to Adam. Look at Adam's response, though. He's kind of limp wrist. He's kind of sort of there. Granted, he's just been created, but God is reaching out to him. And I would point out to you that when we reach back with a similar intensity, and those fingers actually touch, that is when miracles begin to happen. So, Dana, isn't that fascinating that when God reaches out with great intensity and we reach back and those fingers actually touch symbolically, that's when miracles happen? And I find it beautiful, and that's really what we're trying to do, is get that message across, particularly to the young people who may not have ever heard anything about these things. They need to know about the God of miracles in whom they can trust and rely on.
And what we need to be able to do in our country is to be able to trust those who represent us.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many hands that are trying to reach across the aisle on Capitol Hill, in our nation's capital,
True.
to solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that one of those individuals has reached out to you, Senator Lee.
He has. He very kindly stepped in front of the camera for us to share his thoughts about the founding of this nation, the Constitution. And we'll just go ahead and run that clip for you right now. Take a look at Senator Mike Lee, from the freshman senator making positive impact in Washington.
Americans who lived at the time of our nation's founding certainly were heroes, and they participated in what was a divinely directed miracle. We brought about a revolution that ended up being successful, a revolution against what was, at that time, the world's greatest superpower. It was an unlikely group of rebels, certainly an unlikely group of victors. But they succeeded because they stood on principle. They succeeded in spite of the fact that they were underfunded, in spite of the fact that they were militarily weak, in spite of the fact that they were, even at that time, a minority within a minority. They didn't have the overwhelming support of everyone, even on this continent, and yet they chose to do what they knew was right because they cared about future generations of Americans. The Constitution is itself the product of a miracle because it's still intact. Almost 226 years after it was written, it's still intact. It's still our governing document. That in and of itself is a huge accomplishment. It also has fostered the development of the greatest civilization the world has ever known. And that's no small accomplishment. Miracles that occur to me personally are sacred, and I hold them as such. But I will say this, miracles are real. They do exist. We have to look for them, and we have to be able to recognize them when they do happen. But this world, this universe, is governed by an all-knowing, loving God who is very mindful of us and wants us to be happy. When we seek for His miracles and when we recognize them for what they are, they will continue to happen.
I really like what Senator Lee said about how you seek the miracle, then you recognize it, and then it can happen.
Right.
And you're seeking help by reaching out to people, hoping they'll see really what you're doing, and the miracle will happen. In this case, Miracle's the movie.
I could not have said it better. That is exactly right. We're on a walk of faith, making a movie about a walk of faith.
I like that. I like that a lot.
And it has not been easy. I would tell you that this has been one of the hardest things I've ever done, but I knew that going in. You do not make a film about miracles and not inspire the interest and attention of the adversary. The adversary knows what's going on here.
Yes,
he does
he
not
does.
want this story told.
This is so positive. He doesn't want that out there.
Absolutely.
He doesn't want people to have more hope in their lives.
Exactly. And therefore, we've seen his gloves come off, but no problem. He's the ultimate loser, and we know who wins in the end. And it would be very appropriate that miracles come to the rescue at the latest possible moment so that a story about miracles can be made. And that's where we're at. You know, I have to point out something. This morning I had a thought, and there's somebody out there who's watching this and really wondering if God exists. There is. And I'm telling you, he does. And that is what this show is about, is to remind you that there are many that have lived in the past who have reached out their finger to the finger of God and have touched the finger of God and watched miracles happen. You too can do that. And this film is designed so that people can have that hope and exercise that faith and then watch a miracle happen. Could I share another video clip about that idea?
Absolutely.
We've got Timothy Ballard. Timothy Ballard.
Now, he's an author, isn't he?
He is. He's an author. He wrote a book called The Covenant, One Nation
I've heard of that
Under
book.
God.
Yes.
And it is an analysis of the founding of this nation and the documents and the words of the founders themselves, acknowledging that it was impossible to do what they did, that they needed divine intervention, they needed divine help to be able to accomplish this task, and that they saw it. You know, the book Covenant, it's very interesting. A covenant is a two-way promise between God and man. A covenant, right? Two-way promise. And what they did is they put their name, they wrote a document out called the Declaration of Independence, wherein that they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. I find it fascinating. I did not realize this until somebody pointed out the other day, that all 56 signers that signed that pledge, that covenant, not one of them broke their covenant. A bunch of them lost their lives. Many of them lost their fortunes. Many of them lost family members, wives and children, and things like this, their homes. But not one of them broke their covenant. And when they do that, when we make covenants and combine our spirits and try to reach out to God in a covenant, he will deliver. And he delivered the greatest nation of freedom in the history of the world, that has had the greatest longevity in the history of the world, so that truth could go out from this nation to the entire world. It's amazing to me, and we should watch that clip.
Let's do it.
Would you like to see that, Dana?
Definitely.
Okay.
When God is interested in something and people are responsive to him, miracles happen. And that sums up a lot of American history. Our history is scripture-like. I mean, you read the Old Testament and you lay it next to American history and you see it's the same pattern. And the founders understood that and they believed that, and they made it very clear to us that that's what they believed. And they were the ones identifying the miracles. We don't have to. We just have to listen to their words. And if you don't want to believe George Washington, if you don't want to believe Ben Franklin, that's on you. But they said it, they recognized it, and then we have all the witness. We have the evidence. We can put it together and say, look, these things happened. This is the facts. You can call it a coincidence, but you know, there's only so many coincidences before you gotta start seeing a pattern and say, there's something more to this. Something's going on here that's bigger than all of us. And so I'm hopeful that we, as a nation, we can pull ourselves out of whatever issues we have, if we will but do what our founders taught us to do. And unfortunately, there's too many people in powerful positions who don't understand that and who don't apply those lessons. But I do have hope that there are enough that are rising up and are understanding. And once we get enough who are standing up or kneeling down, we will have the return of the covenant and the return of those miracles. Moses is America's prophet. I mean, I believe the story of the children of Israel is our story in so many ways. And the one thing I find in Moses that I think is the great lesson for America is, you know, as he's leading these children of Israel out, a lot of them, if you read the account, they wanted to go back into slavery because they realized, well, with freedom comes this responsibility. And I want to go back into slavery where I was secure. Well, if you go that route, you don't have salvation. And I see too many Americans following that example today. Instead of turning to God, they're turning to the state. And as they turn to the state grows and grows and grows. And they'll take you by the hand and they'll promise to feed you and clothe you and take care of you, but they're not going to lead you down the road of salvation. What Moses was trying to get the children of Israel to do is forget about the Pharaoh. Let the state do its thing. Turn to God, and God will lead you into light and salvation. And so I think that lesson from Moses and the children of Israel is our lesson today, the one we need to apply today.
Now in 90 seconds, what a powerful, meaningful message.
Yes.
Boy, he just nailed it.
Yes, yes. And it is people like Timothy Ballard, Rabbi Danial Lapin, which we're going to hear from here in just a moment, David Barton, Senator Mike Lee. We're hoping to interview additional people like David McCullough, Pulitzer Prize winner. We don't have that nailed down yet, but that's the kind of person that we want to interview, to tell factual stories from the past that will inspire hope in our future and the peace that comes with that hope. And that's what we're trying to do with Miracles, the movie, at miraclesthemovie.com.
And you know, what would it mean to you to be able to tell your son, your daughter, maybe your grandson or granddaughter, that I was a part of this as they see it on the TV screen. I donated to help this be made because I wanted to help bring more hope to God's children. What an example that can set and what that can mean in the minds of those young children.
Yes. We tell these stories, I believe quite firmly that if the youth could just hear these stories, because they're not being told these stories at school.
No, they're not. They're absolutely not.
That they will have hope and they will be different. They will rise to their opportunities as opposed to wallowing down here where we're mostly at. And I think that's a good thing. I want that for my kids. I want that for my future grandchildren. I want hope. I want freedom. So that's why we're making this film.
Well, we all need to be inspired.
Yes.
And this will inspire people. And we all need to feel better about what's happening in our lives.
Yes.
This can help people understand more what is going on and what they might be able to do so they can have a better life.
You know, I appreciate the way you put that because Rabbi Lapin, who we're going to listen to here in just a moment, he knocks this out of the park. It is so amazing. Everybody that's heard his explanation about what miracles are, how they can happen, how everyone can have access to a miracle. Everyone can have access to a miracle if they follow the formula. And he's going to tell us about that formula right now.
Miracles follow and arrive almost inevitably, provided we take the first step. And it's a first step based on action, not just on prayer. Prayer is a necessary but not a sufficient element to bring about miracles. There is a presumption that God delivers whatever you ask. And like any good father or any good mother, God will very often say no. What we ask for and what we want may not necessarily be in our best interest. So people assume, well, I guess I'm not going to get a miracle. That's not exactly how miracles work, and that's not what they're all about. But if Noah had to put his faith in God, and why did God make a 600-year-old man work so hard to build an ark? I mean, obviously he was going to be saved by a miracle. Why couldn't God have just done the miracle, right? Just let God have made the ark. That's the key question. Crossing the Red Sea, miracle, right? Clearly a miracle. Now, if you take a look at the verses, it's really very interesting. The Israelites are told to march into the water, and only after that will the water split. So everybody has to get their tuxedos wet, their Armani shoes have to get soaking. If God's going to do a miracle anyways, I mean, you're going to have to do a miracle to split the Red Sea. Why don't you do it in time and let everybody walk over without getting wet? The answer in all cases is we all bring miracles by acts of determined faith. God was certainly going to save Noah and his family and all the animals during the turbulent storm and the flood, but Noah had to do his part. And he had to withstand the ridicule of all the people in his neighborhood. This was like a very bizarre backyard boat building project. And only after that was the miracle brought into existence. You don't get miracles from sitting in an armchair, no matter how fervently you pray. And the Israelites obviously were going to receive the miracle of getting away from the Egyptians with the splitting of the Red Sea, but not until they had acted with determined faith, walked in, and tradition has it they walked in, the water came right up to their necks before it split. And that's how it works. And that's the key thing. And the mistake that so many of us make is, metaphorically, we sit back in the armchair and saying, doesn't God care about me? Yes, he does, but you need to know how the world really works. And the way God created this world is everybody can have a miracle. But you've got to start it off. You've got to commit an act of determined faith. If you look at the verses, it's perfectly obvious that the water doesn't split until they actually march forward. No matter how unpleasant Egypt really was, it's preferable to the unknown. And I think that's true for almost everybody, even today. This was a solid, rapid decision. Moses said, we're all leaving Egypt. 80% of the people said, oh, no, we're not. He didn't do it incrementally. And that's why only 20% left. It's very understandable. Look, there are many aspects of ancient Jewish wisdom that are shocking, even disturbing. And the point is that nobody ever grows by being massaged with warm butter. By just surrounding ourselves in a cocoon of predictable comfort, we stay exactly the same. There's no movement, there's no challenge, there's no growth. And so much of ancient Jewish wisdom's unpacking of the encoded data that is found within the Hebrew language in Scripture is designed to shock us out of complacency and share information with us that is true and disturbing. Now, there is much information that one can obtain in the world which is untrue and very comforting. We prefer information that is true even if it is disturbing. And one example of that information is that only 20% of the Israelites chose to follow Moses out of Egypt. The rest became assimilated into Egypt and faded away and vanished as Egyptian civilization faded away and vanished. That rule applies whenever the going gets tough. You can count on 20% of the people. That's the rule. But in Hebrew, when one word means two things, you have to merge them. The word Egypt is not just the name of a place in North Africa. The word Egypt in Hebrew means straitjacket, something that locks you up, something that constrains you. And that's what Egypt is. It's a place that limits and restricts your capacity to achieve God's destiny for your life. These things that restrict us can be financial problems, they can be marital problems, it can be addictions, it can be pornography or alcohol or drugs. All of these things are Egypt's. And getting out of Egypt is why we need those 12 chapters of Exodus. It literally is a step-by-step blueprint to bring a miracle into your life. This important principle that you can have a miracle in your life, I can have a miracle in my life, everybody can have miracles when they need them in their lives, provided they know, recognize, and build up enough confidence to take that determined act of faith in the first place. So you're going to do a miracle, because you have to kickstart your own miracle.
The rabbi ended with, you have to kickstart your own miracle. And I'd just like to say this, you'll spend $7 going to a bin in a store to get a movie that you've seen 2 or 3 times already, but you want it in your library, and you'll spend that $7, and you'll enjoy it. Why not spend the $7, give the $7 to Miracles the Movie, and give hope to people all over the country?
Thank you very much. That's a great point. We actually have opportunities from $5, $20, $50, $100, $222, $1,000, all the way up to $20,000 donation opportunities. And when you go to miraclesthemovie.com website, you'll see that there's those opportunities, but there come gifts that come with that. And the larger the donation, the larger the gift that comes back to you.
Very nice.
Books, downloads, music, ebooks, etc., all sorts of things that are donated from friends that want to encourage others to donate money. And so when you donate, you get something back. For example, if you were to donate $20, you would get a DVD of the film, a download of the film when it's done.
Really?
Yeah. And so it's not even, it's just prepaying for a movie you're going to want to see anyway later. At least that's the hope, that we make the film that you're wanting to see, which I believe people want to see. Miracles. Yeah.
Well, we're going to wrap up here, but what I like to do whenever I do an interview is just give the person I'm talking to just a chance to go directly to the camera and express that last feeling they want to share. Ken, would you do that?
Wow, that's a big responsibility, but there's the camera. We need hope. There's a lot of people that are losing hope, and that is what has impressed me about this project. It felt inspired. It felt like it needed to be done. We needed to do this for the youth. The youth do not have they're not being educated as to what has happened in the past, the success stories of the past, and the miracles that were required to create this free nation, the freest nation in the history of the world. And we see those things slipping away. But these youth, we owe it to the youth to tell them the stories of the past, tell them of those miracles, the miracles that are happening today, and thus give them hope and trust in the God of miracles, who can then perform those. They can call upon for miracles in the future when the times get tough, and they will get tough. I'm doing this for my children. I'm doing this for my future grandchildren. I hope that you'll join me in participating in making miracles happen today. Won't you please go to miraclesthemovie.com and press the donation button and donate what you can, and receive the opportunity to be a part of making miracles happen and blessing a nation that could use this important information. Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate being here with you today.
Ken, it's been my pleasure, and thank you so much for what you are doing, bringing hope to people. So very important. God bless you in your efforts.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure meeting you today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining me today. On behalf of KHQN Radio Television, I'm Dana Robinson. Until next time, think good thoughts and do good deeds.